Hello and welcome to Lost in Sci-Fi and Fantasy. I'm your host Leo, and today we are talking about the original Mad Max. I figured since there's the release of Furiosa this past couple of weeks or so, that I might as well dip into the Mad Max franchise. And yeah, so that's what we're doing. Now, my personal history with Mad Max is extremely limited, as I hadn't really seen the first film, and I hadn't really seen the second film, and then I'd seen bits and pieces of the third film, and then I've seen like some clips of Fury Road. So I've been very much on the far outskirts of this franchise, though there are a few like videos I had watched, I think from Mr. Sunday Movies, talking about the Mad Max series that helped me kind of wiggle my way into seeing more about like the Mad Max series. And I find it very interesting, especially since the first movie is very separated from the rest of the franchise in comparison, though a lot of the franchise still harkens back to the first movie. It's just that it goes from more dystopian future to post-apocalyptic in the later films. This film is trying to go a bit more for a RoboCop kind of feeling, or like it's supposed to be a dystopian future, a very near future. Literally at the beginning of the film, it says like a few years in the future. Like it's supposed to be a very like, this is gonna happen, but a lot of things are pretty much the same. It's just like society is a bit shit, and that's about it. No future weapons or anything. It's just things are a bit shit. But then it goes to like water crisis and fuel crisis, and all this stuff towards like properly like apocalyptic. And I find that to be a very interesting thing. I've also dipped my toe into the Mad Max video game. I need to see about maybe actually playing through that at some point, but we'll see. But other than that, I think that's pretty much my entire history with Mad Max up to this point, and except for the fact that I have now watched the entirety of the first film. The first film, I would say, is definitely fine. It's interesting and it has some very funny moments, but it kind of jumps around for like the first half of the film. And then it like Max doesn't get mad until about the last 15 minutes of the film. And yeah, and then it just kind of rushes to the end and boop, it's done. But with what they were working with for this film, it's a low budget Australian film, and they were able to do quite a bit with very little. I mean, it doesn't feel very dystopian, except for like the fact that like the police headquarters is like a derelict warehouse. The streets are running rampant with these like criminals, but otherwise, it's just pretty much quaint countryside for most of the film, and that's about it. But anywho, let's go ahead and start kind of diving into the plot. So the movie opens with a long title sequence where it says, Mad Max, and then it goes through all the people who worked on the film. It's this movie came out in 1979, so it has like a bit of an intro credit sequence. It's very bland of an intro credit sequence because it's just a black screen with names on it. But again, they're working with a fairly light budget, so put the money where you need it. And so the opening, like the actual opening scene, is a car chase. So the cops have been given a call that there is a cop killer on the loose, and they're blasting down the highway. So it becomes a multi-car chase as two cop cars are chasing this one down, and one of them just keeps getting into accidents. Like it's the same one each time, as they end up accidentally crashing, or they get knocked off the road. Yeah, the car that keeps getting into a bunch of accidents is one of the pursuit vehicles that was pulled off to the side of the road. One of them was spying on a couple having sex out in a field, and they get the call and head off to chase it. And the entire time, the scene's interspersed with Max just getting ready for some reason. So the first time that the vehicle gets knocked off the road is as they're kind of meeting up with the actual pursuit, like the actual chase going on. The, I guess, co-pilot, the guy in the shotgun seat, pulls out a shotgun and is going to shoot them, but they pump the brakes super fast, so they end up overshooting, and he misses, and the car swerves off into a sign, and they end up with the hood off, like the hood falls off their car, and so they have to try to re-ramp up and continue chase. They're able to eventually catch up, but then the second time is when the chase goes into a more public area, and they end up crashing through a family's like caravan, and one of them gets like a knife or something like to the throat, but they survive. He just has to use a voice, like an external voice box now. But yeah, the chase is kind of concluded because after that the criminals kind of lose their tail, but Max is on the case. He slowly like pulls out from where he was parked and sets up, gets ready to intercept because he is the interceptor. His car on the back says Interceptor, and so he lines up and he's getting ready, and then he chases him down and he plays chicken with the guy. Then he swoops around and chases him, and after the game of chicken, the criminal goes from super confident to like bawling his eyes out, presumably because he knows that he's probably not going to make it out of this, I guess. Personally, it was a little hard for me to actually hear most of the dialogue in this film, but that could mostly be my audio system. But anyway, Max kind of gets up behind him and pushes him with his car, and they end up at a roadblock. Max pulls away, but the guy doesn't stop in time and ends up crashing and dying. Now, the entire time during the chase, he's talking about how he wants Toe Cutter to recognize him. He wants Toe Cutter to see him. And his call sign is Knight Rider, or the Knight Rider. And he dies in the crash. And so now Toe Cutter, according to a later scene, is going after Max. Though we don't really actually feel this quote-unquote pressure that's supposed to have been put on, but yeah. But after this incident, Max goes home, has some dinner with his family. He has a wife and a kid, and he's quite happy, though his wife is probably feeling that he's a bit too distant because he's not talking about the issues too much. Then, like, the next day, he has to go in early because he's meeting up with the Goose. And he goes in, meets with the Goose, and the Goose and friend presents him with a new car. One of the last V8 engines out there that's been built piece by piece by the mechanic. But it is implied, and I guess technically straight up stated, that the police force, what are they called? The MPD or something like that. They're this like very small rundown kind of police force. And they are bribing Max to stay in the fight, essentially. The chief believes in heroes and whatnot, that there aren't enough heroes anymore and people don't believe in heroes anymore, but he sees in Max a genuine hero, etc., etc. But Max has been growing more and more disillusioned with the idea of the police work that he's been doing, so they decide to bribe him. Now, the guy that they're talking about how, I guess partially the finances and whatnot to do with the bribe, who literally only appears in this scene and then it doesn't reappear again. He has like a kendo uniform on, and he has a kendo stick, and the radio lady talks about, like, calling in the samurai, which is possibly him? Don't know about the costume choice. It was a bit weird. Again, for a guy that just appears and then disappears, choices were made. Found it very silly. But after that is the scene where the chief kind of tells Max that Toe Cutter and friends are, they have it out for him now because they killed the Knight Rider. But Max is like, okay. Which is probably about as appropriate as it can be, since they don't really do anything for most of the film. In fact, it doesn't seem that any of the things, like the interactions that they have anything to directly do with the fact that Knight Rider was killed. So, yeah, it's one of those things. But anywho, we're actually then introduced to Toe Cutter and gang as they start to hassle a town. Now, the reason that they're in this town is that they are trying to pick up the casket of Knight Rider. Toe Cutter seems to have a way with words and charisma, and he's able to, get people to do what he wants, kind of thing, through his, I guess his high charisma stat, as he's able to talk to the guy at the train station and is able to get him to kind of back down. Now, a couple, hearing, all the commotion and whatnot, that had just, woken up, try to flee from the scene, but are, for some reason, immediately chased down and assaulted. And one of the members is left behind for some reason. And so they arrest him, but because no one shows up to the trial, the case is thrown out, and he's let go. And Goose is very mad about this, because one of the people that was assaulted was a young woman, and he's very upset about that, rightly so. So he starts kind of throwing threats out, but because the guy was released, he ends up going to sabotage Goose's bike. He sabotages Goose's bike, and Goose, once he hits a top speed, the wheel locks up and sends him flying, but he ends up actually unharmed. So he ends up calling a truck to help him transport the bike back to his the headquarters. And then the guy, I guess presumably following to make sure that he died, chucks something at the truck, causing the truck to go end over end, landing upside down, where Toe Cutter then has the guy, whose name is Johnny the Boy. He kind of coerces Johnny the Boy to light a match and burn Goose alive. Upon seeing Goose's remains, Max decides to quit the force. He's had enough. He's done. He's scared. He has a wife. He has a kid. He can't anymore. So him and his wife start going on a journey, having a wonderful time as they're just driving about. And then they stop to get a tire fix because one of their tires blew out. And his wife and kid go off to get some ice cream. Now, this just so happens to be where Toe Cutter and co are hanging out. And they notice her and decide that they want to accost her. Well, she's able to thwart their attempt by kicking Toe Cutter in the dick and shoving ice cream in his face. She gets away with Max, and they go and hide out in a farm. Then she decides, while at the farm, thinking, oh, that's done. Well, so actually, she then discovers, once they get to the farm for the first time, that, one of their hands is on the car still, without the body. Because he had thrown a chain at the, luggage rack of the van thing that they have, and it ripped off his hand. So they take that to someone, I'm guessing it's the Dark One. This character literally, comes out of nowhere and is mentioned again later. I'm guessing, because the guy that they go see about the hand is not really mentioned who he is, And then later on at the farm, when there's a bit of an issue, Max is like, call the Dark One and, tell him to get here now. It's like, okay, who the fuck's that guy? Sure. He pretty much tells them, don't worry about it. It's fine. Consider it lost property. If no one comes to claim it, then, well, it's forfeit. So they go back to the farm. They have a nice cuddly time. His wife decides that she wants to go down to the beach. And Max is like, I would love to join you, but I need to fix the car. And so she's like, okay. Now, the description was that the beach was fairly close by. It is not. It is a trek through the woods to get to. And as she's trekking through the woods, we do notice that the people have been following them. She's relaxing. She goes for a bit of a swim, is relaxing on the beach, and then she works her way back through the woods, but she feels like she's being followed. And the dog that they had recently got off of a farm and was with them wanders off, and she can hear the yelping off in the distance. The dog does end up dying, and she ends up running into it, and she's able to make it out of the woods. Max grabs his gun and goes into the woods, and while she's trying to calm down, she remembers, oh fuck, right, I have a kid. Goes out looking for the kid. The kid's missing. Turns out Toe Cutter and gang have the kid. The little old lady that they're staying with comes out with a gun, holds them at gunpoint, and forces them into like a shed, while she gets the kid, runs to the van, then she joins her, and they flee, but I guess in ramming the gate, because the old lady's like, just don't worry about the gate, go through it. It ended up damaging the radiator of the car, and it craps out on them. So she grabs the baby, gets out and starts running, but ends up getting run down by the gang. The baby dies instantly. She ends up in a coma, and her prospects are not looking too good. Though the doctors say that there's a chance she might survive. But, yeah. But from this point, then, Max gets mad. He takes the car that was introduced earlier on in the film. He somehow materializes a sawed-off shotgun, and he hunts the gang down. And he runs most of them off the road, except for the boy, who ended up falling behind and whatnot and didn't get the main runoff that happened. But that ended up being a bit fortuitous for Max, as the boy called Toe Cutter and whatnot to join the fray. Toe Cutter and his left hand or right hand man go, and they end up shooting Max in the leg and running over his arm. So now he has a broken arm and a shot up leg, and he's able to kill the right hand man, and Toe Cutter flees, and the boy also flees. Max is able to get up and limp to his car and chase down Toe Cutter, and he ends up in the chase able to force Toe Cutter off into a semi-truck, killing him. Then he doubles back and goes on a really long search, at least fully into night, into the next day, and comes across the boy, or Johnny the boy, who seemingly ran a guy off the road and was trying to steal his shoes. So Max takes a pair of handcuffs, cuffs his leg, cuffs him to the wreckage, sets up an elaborate thing with the guy's lighter, like a track, and fuel that's leaking from the crashed vehicle, and takes a bone saw that, again, materializes out of nowhere, and gives it to him and says, the chain to those are made of, iron. So if you work at them, it'll take you about 10 minutes to cut through them with that saw. If you instead decide to start cutting through your leg, you might be able to get through it in 5. Good luck. And then he leaves. And as he drives away, it explodes, and then the movie ends. And that's Mad Max. Overall, I would say it's pretty fine. It's a little bit slow at times. And again, like I said at the beginning, it kind of jumps around a lot to some scenes that feel not really all that consequential at times. but eventually it starts getting rolling, and it feels pretty good. Could have done a little bit more to actually explain the world that they're in, but again, I can see the budgetary limits of this film. Some fun things to do with the film that I do know of include the fact that he was shot in the leg is a persistent thing. He always has a leg brace pretty much from this point on. It varies how much it actually affects him, but yes. As for his arm, I think that he just his arm ends up mostly fine for the rest of the things. Because a broken arm can heal. But, yeah. And the actor who played Toe Cutter does actually come back and plays Immortan Joe in Fury Road, which I found to be very interesting. Now, I also know that Immortan Joe shows up in Furiosa, but he is not played by the same actor as he died 2 years ago. But the person that they cast to play Immortan Joe in Furiosa is a pretty good match for the guy who plays him in Fury Road, so I'll give them kudos there. I really want to see Furiosa, but I want to kind of watch all the other ones first. So I'll just patiently wait, especially since I haven't seen Fury Road even. I know that Furiosa is a prequel, but still, I kind of want to at least have the context of the character in general before I go into Furiosa. But yeah, overall, it was a really good film. Well, overall, it was a pretty good film that sparked a wider franchise and helped boost the career of George Miller to where he's able to do more Mad Max things. He has big plans, supposedly, for the Mad Max franchise. Like, he has a Mad Max film called The Wasteland in the works currently that's supposed to be another prequel thing that's supposed to lead up to Fury Road. And I believe, according to Tom Hardy signed on for like 3 more Mad Max films. So if he's in the Wasteland film, that means that there's at least 2 more Mad Max films planned after that as well. So we'll see. We'll see where this goes. I will probably try to sprinkle in the other 3 Mad Max movies at some point, and then once Furiosa comes out on DVD or Blu-ray, I'll probably cover Furiosa as well. But I'll sprinkle them in here and there every so often while I can. But yeah, other than that, I think we're gonna go ahead and call it there. If you guys liked this, feel free to give it a like, comment, and subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. Or you can rate and review it wherever you listen to podcasts on whatever podcast catcher you choose. But with that said, thank you once again for listening. I will talk to you guys next week. Goodbye.